Good day, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the future of information technology. Today, we will explore the element of growth and agility in technology companies as they adapt to the new circumstances of today and how they use smart technology to help them drive growth, both growth and agility. My name is Vijay Sundaram. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Zoho. Zoho is a company that develops software applications for mid-sized companies across a very broad gamut of business functions, starting from user experience software like marketing, sales, customer support, some back-end processing and operations software that runs HR, finance, IT, and other back-office operations, and of course, a productivity and collaboration suite that enables us all to work in today's world, both wherever we choose to and whenever we choose to operate. I have with me today two colleagues. First is Paul Tedford. Paul Tedford is the CEO of Synergy. This is a manufacturing ERP company that caters to small and medium-sized businesses. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Vijay. Pleasure to be on with you and Seth.
Thank you, appreciate that. I also have with me Seth Robinson. Seth is a senior director, and he's the senior director of CompTIA, which is one of the larger industry trade associations in the tech industry. Seth has written and spoken a lot on a variety of topics from cloud computing to mobility and security and other areas, and I thought he'd be a very valuable addition to this webinar. Welcome, Seth, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, wonderful. So let me kick this off by starting by moving to Paul. Paul is, I should say, is also a customer of Zoho's. Zoho has customers across 150 different companies, across small and mid-range companies, across all of these business functions. Paul's company is also a Zoho customer. Paul is unique in that he's a provider of technology and he's also a consumer of technology. So he sees it from both sides. So Paul, what I'd like to start with is, what are the considerations you have when you start to make a technology pick for yourself and therefore for your customers?
Yeah, when we're looking at technology, we're looking at a few things. We're looking at speed to value, automation, integration from a unified platform, no code, low code platform that can foster digital transformation, and of course the ability to pull analytics that can help us, make sure we're on the right track and improving our results. We always start with the end results in mind when looking at any technology and evaluate that technology to make sure it meets our critical business requirements, and it will drive our key performance indicators and metrics. It could be the coolest technology or software in the world, but if it does not improve our business performance, it really doesn't matter. So these are the things that we look at. We also want to ensure that we can realize value quickly and can continually add features and functionality, based on our medium to long-term goals. One key aspect I didn't mention that we really look at is a solution to foster collaborations, as our teams really traditionally work from home or on site with our customers. However, with the current pandemic, we're all working from home, as you know. So those are the things that we really look at when we're evaluating technology.
Okay, so when you use a number of Zoho products, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about what you use and what drove some of your decisions to making those kinds of decisions, given that you use it to deliver technology to your customers.
Sure. We started with Zoho CRM. We were in the market for a CRM about 2 years ago that could, integrate with Outlook, first of all. That was web enabled because we have sales reps across Canada and the US. And we also have a large service team across the North America. So we wanted to have that customer 360 experience. So it was important for all of our teams and everybody at Synergy to have access to that customer data. So we started with the goals of sales enablement, marketing automation, having a customer 360 type visibility for everybody in our company. and of course, analytics there. So when we started with CRM, and we're able to implement that, if you can believe it, in under 8 weeks. I think it was actually 6 weeks. We started right after Thanksgiving and went live on 1/1/2018, I believe. So it was a quick implementation, getting back to that speed to value. And then since then, we've started to use Zoho Desk to improve responsiveness to our customers and service turnaround time, as well as using tools such as Zoho Project to manage our projects, and of course, Zoho Click, which manages our internal chat environment as well.
Well, thank you for that overview. One of the questions we get from customers a lot is when they look at a gamut of software solutions, it's sometimes hard to figure out where to start. Do you start on the sales side, do you start on the support side, or do you start on enabling your employees? How did you approach that decision? Where did you put the first systems in place, and when did you bring the other ones in? And whose buy-in did you need to get all this to happen?
Right, so good question. So at the time, we were really just focused on sales enablement. We thought we were doing pretty well everywhere else, and we needed to up our game with automating our sales process, ensuring leads were followed up with quickly. But as we looked at all the CRM systems, we wanted to make sure that we could have that midterm and long-term priorities and things that we could improve on in the software. So that's why we chose Zoho, because it had the desk, it had project, it allows for surveys, Zoho Sign, which is a replacement for DocuSign, all in one system. So we really just, based on need, we focused on sales in this case. And then quickly after that, we after implementing the CRM, the next thing we implemented was Click, because it's really important to foster collaboration across our teams, especially in times like this when we're all working from home and we don't get to see each other at customer sites or go out to dinner or be able to chat around a couple of drinks as much as we used to. So Click was born out of necessity and born out of a way to enable all of our employees to get immediate responses when they're dealing with customer issues, or to improve their knowledge, and ultimately it helps us really improve our culture. So we started with CRM because we didn't have a good CRM, and we needed to improve that, and then we built on and added Click, and then Desk and other tools after that.
Okay, so if I could summarize, you started with the process of engaging with the customer, so the CRM was a cornerstone of your strategy, and then you realized you have to set up the communication systems that are real time, and so you went into messaging and others and communication, and then you went back into, okay, the back end of that customer experience, loyalty, service, and so you went into support software. Is that a fair way?
You got it. It's we have a saying with our customers when we're implementing ERP or business improvement or business transformation is, make sure you focus on continuous improvement. You want to keep that key stakeholder team together and make sure every quarter you're driving new improvements. So we did the same thing internally. So every quarter we've added something new in the platform.
Wonderful, thank you. Over to you, Seth, for a minute. Perhaps you can start by telling us a little bit about what your focus at CompTIA, and also love to see what you're hearing in these times. I mean, you talk to a broader set of people than probably myself or Paul, and love to hear from you.
Sure. Like you mentioned before, I'm part of the research team at CompTIA, focusing mainly on technology trends. I've been with CompTIA for 10 years. So roughly around the time that cloud computing really kicked off. And so I've been able to watch how cloud computing and the tools that are getting built on cloud models are changing businesses, and watching organizations go through digital transformation. And I think that theme of digital transformation has been one that we've had for a few years, but when you're talking about what's happened over the past few months, I think we're looking at that through a new lens. I think that people have been going through their digital transformation, and we've been saying for quite a while that it's about more than just the tools, but I think that message has been a little tricky to catch on. And in the past few months, I think it's caught on even more. listening to what Paul is describing with his business, it sounds like they're really following the themes here that a lot of companies are that are on the cutting edge of digital transformation, which is examining the culture, examining the end results, and not just bringing in tools, but trying to change the culture, change the workflow, change the behaviors inside the company and with any external customers or suppliers or partners in order to make business be something different than it was before, rather than simply running the same old business on some kind of a digital platform. And again, over the past few months, I think a lot of companies have realized that they might have just been doing the same old things in a new way rather than doing completely new things. And I think there's been a lot more pressure to try to figure out what that new way of doing things would be that would lead to more sustainability and more flexibility.
Thank you for that. You touched on the term culture, and that strikes a resonance with what we ourselves at Zoho do, and in some ways has determined how we even evolve our software. A lot of things. One element of our culture, for example, is distributed decision making. And so if you want to do that, if you want to push your decisions down, you need to have the right tools to do that, and you need to have more informal processes to do that. So that's actually how our messaging software started, because we wanted people to come in ad hoc ways, have these ad hoc groups and not schedule meetings and make decisions quickly. So one interesting thing we saw over time is there's almost a circular dependence between these two. There's a certain culture you want to establish, and you want the tools to do that. So you pick the right set of tools. In our case, since we use our own tools, you develop the right set of tools to do that. And then over time, the tools start to determine the culture. When you start to have a messaging system and people realize that you can skip levels and start to make some calls and start to handle issues that you may not have been in your zone because you're just your zone of necessarily competence or knowledge, you can just step into something because it's an open system. Then all of a sudden, the tool starts to change the culture even further. So in some ways, when you talk of digital transformation, you think of from the technology, but I'm glad, Seth, that you talked about how it actually has an equal role to play in the culture. Any thoughts on that, Paul? Have you seen anything like that as you've adopted technology?
Yeah, absolutely, especially around Click. It's really changed the game for us. So when as mentioned, when we weren't able to go on site as much anymore, those personal bonds that you make by interacting socially outside of the work environment are very important to have a happy workforce, an engaged workforce, and that kind of has a result on your customer satisfaction, right? If you have engaged employees, if you have a team that really loves what they're doing and working together, they really usually give better results to our customers. So having a tool that allows us to engage on both almost a social level and sometimes, but also around providing immediate feedback. So previously, before we had this tool, we would send out emails to hey, these 20 people, one of them might know an answer. And first of all, we wouldn't get a response back because not everybody's looking at email all day long, right? Until it was too late. And second of all, you'd get 10 reply alls, and now reply alls to that, at the end of the day, you have over 100 emails. So being able to reduce the amount of emails we have has improved our efficiency. It's allowed us to focus on what's important, and the tool set has also allowed us to stay engaged from being able to respond to colleagues when they're stuck not on site anymore, but they're stuck from their home now, and they have a customer that needs an issue to be resolved, and they might not know the exact best practice. They can ask a team of people in real time to get a result back from that, which helps them because they feel better that they've helped the customer, and it helps our company because our customers are satisfied. So, we feel it's been a remarkable tool for culture in our company.
Okay, great to hear that. Seth, coming back to this issue on transformation, one of the focuses of this webinar is to talk about agility, especially in the context of what's happening today, when you have things that none of us would have ever anticipated, and we still have businesses to run. We have 10,000 people working completely from home, and so is Paul's company. So how does the notion of agility for us, say a year ago, would have been, getting to the right products, to the right market in time with the right sort of capabilities and timing all that well and so on. In these times, has that changed? Does it take something else for a business to be agile? What are you hearing?
I think it's changed slightly. I think people are much more focused on business continuity, that maybe that aspect of agility, and making sure that whenever there's a disruption, that the business can continue running, or that they know how to begin recovering from whatever that disruption might be. We've seen this in businesses before where there's been a natural disaster and those businesses learn that they need to build in more resiliency. But I think that this pandemic has made that same impact for all businesses, where people might have thought that they were using cloud computing, using software as a service. They might have thought that they had relatively good communications or collaboration software. And then all of a sudden, when the entire business operation model is disrupted, they find that it's not quite as strong as they thought it was. So I think there's been a lot of examination of what it would take to create a really digital infrastructure for the business and create something that could be resilient. And one of the challenges with this is that IT for many years was always seen as a cost center. And people wanted to keep the IT budgets flat and get the same amount of IT, or maybe small increases in the budget, but very large increases in their technology capabilities. And now we're looking at IT a lot more strategically. And so companies aren't just saying, I want to keep the budget as constrained as possible. They're saying we're willing to spend on the technology if we can understand what the return will be. And that ROI calculation is a little bit of a unique situation for a CIO or an IT director to go through if they've been used to running a cost center. So I think that that's where a focus on agility factors in, that you might be investing more in cloud computing, you might be investing more in having your cloud solution be spread across multiple geographies, but it's coming, it pays dividends on the back end. If something happens, then you can spin up your business and you can keep running as though nothing ever happened. And so I think businesses are thinking a little bit more strategically about their technology now, rather than just viewing it as a tactical support layer.
That's a great point. And I think let's pick up a couple of things you mentioned there. You talked about a strategic view of IT. You also talked about ROI, and we talked earlier about culture. So if you put all these things together, one of the things we are seeing, and we ourselves as a company evaluate when we look at returns to any investment, a lot of times it's not just, you can't spin this out in a spreadsheet. We can't work this out into just a comparison of technologies or other stuff, because there is that culture aspect. I'll give you one example. We run a customer, a group of a customer council, right? An advisory council of customers who can advise our business. And to manage that, you need a certain set of technologies that combines a lot of things, combines meeting stuff like this, surveys, polls, easy way for people to engage and have it all in one place. Now, that's an investment that you can't really put a number on, but as an executive, that's something you ought to do. And if you didn't have the right tools, you won't really be able to pull it off. So has that assessment of a return or what you're looking for from software changed as businesses and work has become a lot more collaborative and cooperative, in your sense?
Yeah, I think the word you mentioned there at the end, collaborative, is really the key metric here that a lot of companies are working towards, rather than have things be in silos. So rather than the business units say, here's what we need to accomplish, and then that gets thrown over the wall to the IT team in order to build the system. I think companies are moving towards a much more collaborative environment where everyone's at the table. And this requires everyone to understand the language a little bit better. So the business units have to understand technical language a little bit more, and the IT team has to understand the business language a little bit more. But I think, to your point, that's the culture that companies are trying to build. Because companies experimented for a little while with business units maybe procuring their own technology. And in relatively short order, they found out that there are problems. If you do that and you leave the IT team completely out of the loop, you run into integration issues, you run into security issues, and the business units are usually not equipped to solve those things. So companies have really been trying to move towards a collaborative environment where everyone still owns certain pieces, and maybe the business unit still owns the final procurement decision, but IT is well aware of that decision. They've advised, they've put in plans for integration, and so everyone's making the decision together. And I think Paul has mentioned that too. That the way that they decide on technology is not in a siloed fashion, but it's in looking at the needs of the business and then working backwards into the type of technology that's going to meet those objectives. So I think that that's a journey that we've seen companies go on for the past few years. I would say not a lot of companies are all the way there yet. You've got a handful of companies that have really been working on this. Maybe they started from a good point of having a really aggressive culture around technology and wanting to adopt things and be collaborative in the first place. And other companies are somewhere along the way in working towards that and understanding how to communicate the needs and then how to measure results on the back end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me take up that issue with you, Paul, on how decisions, how your organization makes some of these decisions. As a provider of software, and you're one too, we sell to certain types of, or we reach out to certain types of people in companies, or sometimes as decision makers. A lot of times today, people come to us, right? They discover our technology and our software, and they come to us. And they might be groups inside an organization. And if you've seen the last 10 years, you saw in some ways that office of the CIO get disrupted because the head of marketing and sales wants a solution that works with him. And I mean, much to what Seth was saying. And then you have the operations people want something, and now you have the average company, a relatively large-sized company, with literally hundreds, if not thousands, of cloud software, of solutions all over. And then you have this whole issue of tying it together and so on. So in your company, how do these decisions get made? Or how does even somebody at your level as a CEO, how are you even aware that certain types of software is needed?
Yeah, I think what we've done is kind of, we have an executive leadership team, first of all. So we have the different business units that get together on a weekly basis remotely, and typically it used to be a quarterly basis on site. Now that's remote as well. But during those ones, we're looking at suggestions that we actually pull from clicks. So we have suggestions from the different business teams that we get there, and certainly suggestions from virtual meetings where we're talking face to face like this on a video conference chat, and we're evaluating, hey, what are the needs that we have as an organization, and then we kind of prioritize those and make decisions in that way. We're a pretty we're a good democracy here, I guess. So we usually look at what our priorities are, look at what the solutions that are needed, and then just make a vote on what's the one that we're going to go with next. In some cases, we have to use multiple sets of tools. So it could be two things to fix an issue at once. But back to what Seth was saying about innovation and the IT teams being different. That is absolutely what we're seeing in our company and with our customers, is that we always asked, when is digital transformation going to happen, especially in manufacturing? When's that going to happen? Who's going to drive that? Is that the CIO? Is it the CEO? Is it the director of IT? Is it sales? I'll tell you who's driving it now, and it's COVID. COVID's driving what's going on today, right? It's changed the game immensely. Companies that were just thinking about cloud software, thinking about automation tools, such as either workflow or tools on the shop floor in manufacturing, like Internet of Things. They weren't investing a few months ago. Now we're seeing it day in and day out that they're investing and investing fast. And I think it goes back to, hey, what do we need as a company? Look at our strategic plan. We reset that based on COVID. What do we need to do to be successful now and for the long term? And what are those technologies going to take? And we keep seeing that day in and day out in our company and with our customers.
Okay, that's great to know. So one of the things you talked about, the impact of COVID and how that has changed things. In the last several months, one of the common areas of technology that most people see, we're using it right now, is the notion of video meetings, right? Where people simply have no other choice. They have to work from home. So that's got a lot of attention. A few companies have got a lot of noise around that and so on. And Zoho has its own offerings in that area as well. Beyond that, and I'd like to pose this to both of you, maybe stick with you, Paul, for a minute. So beyond the communication part, which is what you needed immediately, let's assume we are in this game for another 6 months and hopefully not longer, but if we are, what do we need to gear up for besides communication from what you see in your business and perhaps even from the viewpoint of your customer's business?
Yeah, I mean, right now there's some customers that are doing really well because they're in either the medical industry and they're making, respirators, for example, or in their line of business software where people are coming them for solutions like yours. But then some of our customers aren't doing as well, that are in maybe the airline industry and things of that nature. So it really depends on what the customer is looking for. Some customers are focused on cutting cost, so de-risking the supply chain, things of that nature, where some are really focused on growth, because those are the two mechanisms to control bottom line profit, right? So we're seeing a lot of people that are focused on growth and a lot of customers that have traditionally in the manufacturing space that really haven't invested in CRM. They might have a couple outside sales reps. Now they realize they really have to go find more business in different areas of business. So they want to invest in, and they don't have the trade shows to go to anymore either. So how do they get how do they get their message out there on what they sell, what they fabricate, how they can provide value to other suppliers as the end consumer, and automation tools around getting their either marketing or even video publications of what they do, getting that out in YouTube and getting that out to other customers, and then automating those leads coming in from their website or from other campaigns they're doing. We're seeing that even though CRM has been out for a long time, we're seeing that in the manufacturing industry more than we have in the past. And then outside of that, it really comes down to things like automation. So we talked about supply chain a little bit. In the past, people use technology to, use the phone really to communicate, right? Or emails when they're communicating about purchase orders and things of that nature. So when you can have a collaboration portal where a supplier, you can send out a PO in your system, the supplier gets it real time, they can respond to it, it cuts down on all that communication, and it can also provide alerts on, hey, you might be spending this amount of money on a part you don't even need by looking at MRP signals. So saving that cash flow. And then other customers are looking at things like, automating three-way match in their processes. So whatever those automation tools are, we use them with Zoho. We're using things like the workflows in CRM, Desk, and Project to automate all of our processes so we can really work smarter, not harder, right? And be more efficient. So we're focusing we're focusing on anything with our customers that can cut cost or obviously provide growth and improve bottom line profit, and we're doing the same thing internally. Whether we already started with a CRM, so now going on to other tools that can provide that same level of automation.
That was a great explanation. I think the thing that stood out from what you said that resonates with what we do is you talked about a customer portal, which basically improves. It has this sort of uncanny thing of being able to be a bit of a win-win, really, where you can give the customer better service and they do it themselves, right? So it's efficient and it actually works better for the customer. So before I turn to Seth, one of the things that we started the same way. We've been using our communication tools forever, the messaging, the online conferencing, and all of that stuff. Obviously, the current situation made us have to completely depend on it because we have 10,000 people now who need to be connected. But it also forced us to go through some other things. So for example, you talk about trade shows. We do quite a number of them, or attend quite a number of them. We run our own events. All of those got canceled. Every one of those got canceled.
Right.
And we do like 24 a year. And so we decided we wanted to step back and try some new things out. So get back from blindly using online advertising to generate leads and start to look at other ways to drive growth. So that forced us to look at certain set of things, and those experiments are still going on. So we started looking at different ways of generating leads. We started changing the ways we engage with current customers so we can engage closer, retention, improve loyalty. So you talked about workflow. So one of the things we did is started to use business orchestration tools to go to a team and say, we can orchestrate this flow, use analytics, bring information, and match that onto an appropriate workflow in response to the analytics. And the idea is to get closer to the customer, especially the ones that need your attention. So to you, Seth, my larger point is, starting from communication, now we're moving to other areas. And this pandemic, if there is a plus side to it, it's driving innovation and it's changing some of the things that the way companies adapt. How are you seeing that? What are your different clients telling you, and your members of your industry association telling you?
Yeah, there's two things that I would point out in this discussion, which is, if you've got the point tools like communication and collaboration on one hand, and you've got this fully automated dream of everything working perfectly on the other side, the big piece that's in the middle is integration. And Paul, you mentioned that at the top of this whole thing. As people are looking at more and more different solutions, the key part is integrating that all together. And I'll use communication and collaboration as an example here. Everyone's had communication and collaboration tools for a long time. We've had, email is maybe one of the longer running ones, and now we've got a lot of new types cropping up. A few years ago, unified communications was all the rage. And those tools seem to fill a need within a company because everyone's communicating all the time. And so if you can do this on digital platforms, then that's great. I think the struggle that communications and collaboration tools have had is being really well integrated with the workflow, excuse me, rather than standing on their own. And if they stand on their own and you're looking at the feature set about how do these communication tools work, and can you create new channels, and how do you, message somebody, and what do you do with threaded replies, all of that is relevant. But the most relevant piece is, how is it integrated with the existing workflow or the workflow that's transforming over time? And I think that's what companies are struggling with now, is this integration piece is really, really critical. Otherwise, you're just investing in a lot of point solutions that are all going to stand on their own. So you've got this continuum between point solutions, integration, and automation. And then to your point, Vijay, one key thing that's really happening a lot is evaluation of the point tools and of the technologies that's going into them. So we haven't really talked on this webinar yet about things like artificial intelligence or Internet of Things. And the reason that we haven't talked about those, I think, is because those technologies that are getting a lot of focus tend to be embedded in the solutions that companies are buying. And so you're doing this evaluation process, and you have to do it in that collaborative environment that I described earlier. And that whole thing is very new for businesses, to be looking at something and to try to determine, okay, this CRM tool has machine learning built into it. How does that help us? How does that change what we need to do? What would we change internally in order to take advantage of that machine learning? That's a discussion that has to happen across many different departments, the IT team certainly, but also the business units. And so I think that evaluation process is one of the key things that has to happen in the technology procurement stage that really didn't happen before. But back when things were getting thrown over the wall, like I said, there wasn't a lot of evaluation. It was just, we have a business need, here are the systems that are available, let's build it. Now that things are coming down the pipe quite a bit faster, there has to be this evaluation. And I think in a lot of cases, as collaborative as that may be, the IT team is going to take a really strong position in that, because there are technical aspects, especially the ones that lead into integration, that they probably understand the best. And so it's really going to be interesting to see how companies build a culture around evaluating new technology to meet their business needs.
You covered a lot of ground there, Seth. So you talked about AI, and one of the things, and I think you make a useful point on how AIs and AI techniques have been adopted across applications and business areas, right? We ourselves have seen in our apps and others how it's applied to the CRM process, where it actually, the system tells you the customers that are at risk because it can analyze the information, it can look at it. It can look at your patterns of engaging with customers and say, these are some people that have fallen off your radar, right? Because there are too many leads people deal with these days. So that's an example of something within the system. Another example of something across systems is, again, something to do with general health of the customer. So that looks at the invoicing system, it looks at their payments patterns, it looks at new businesses they have from you, and gives you that sense of customer health and well-being, and allows you to make the right decision of how you want to step in and help those customers out. So those are places where and you said it exactly right. A few years ago, we were worried about the Internet of Things and the AI, and now it's just embedded into the system. So you don't even see it, but it's completely there in that whole layer. So that's definitely one area of innovation within the apps where these technologies come in. Another one that we have seen from our customers, and I'd be interested to see this from you, Paul, is more and more we run into companies that have customized their own processes. So they just can't take something like a CRM or whatever we offer and then run it off. So you have to address it a couple of ways. So some of it is you allow the app itself to be customized, and some of it is you provide that layer on the top, which is that workflow or orchestration, and then you just allow all these other tools to just work with that workflow and allow them to do something. I'm personally dealing with this myself. I'm managing an account management team, and I don't really know what the right process is, and no CRM can help me articulate it. So I have to articulate it somehow and then deploy the tools to do it, because that's something in your head and you need the tools to put it together. Do you see stuff like that? I mean, we constantly see that when customers come up with something new, and then we just have to give them the next layer on top.
Right, yeah, so a lot of times we're going in where with our existing customers, we know their processes, but they might have added something new on top. And the good thing that we bring to the table is that our experience and our depth of our consultants. So they've seen all these, even some of these newer technologies being used for incredible benefits, and they can kind of guide best practices based on those new things. But like you mentioned with CRM, there's no 100% right way to turn on workflows, or no 100% right way to use even the stages in a sales process, right? So that's where I think the partner that you're partnering with can really help, because they've seen those best practices and they have those experiences and that kind of thing. So typically when we go in and we see those new things, it's a collaborative effort to say, okay, what's the end result going to be? Again, focus on that end result, and taking that current state process map, looking at the future state process map, and say, okay, like Seth said, do we need integrations? Are the integrations already there? Do we need workflows to support that? How are we going to automate these 5 areas? Because we don't want that to be more cumbersome than it is today. So I think that comes down to a certain level of experience in the industry around best practices and being able to collaborate based on the end results and problem solve with the technology that you of course already have.
Yeah, thank you. And given the current times, you've had to change some processes too, right? And now if you've embedded them deeply into the software, you're kind of stuck with the older process. You need to be articulate something easily and flexibly on the top, and continue to run your business. So yeah, right. That speaks to the need for flexibility.
And
we've got a few minutes.
If I could weigh in on that real quick, Vijay, I think one interesting thing that we're seeing is IT of the past might have been focused primarily around infrastructure, the hardware pieces, and cybersecurity. And now we're seeing much more of a shift into every individual company thinking about how they handle software and software development, to Paul's point about customization and trying to do things differently. A lot of companies always just dealt with packaged software, and now they want to customize things. They want to tailor it to their own needs. And that leads into data management and data analysis, which Paul has also mentioned. And so those are two areas that have always been a part of IT, but are really exploding as opportunities for companies to innovate and grow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing the same exact thing, Seth. So, in the past, like 5 years ago, you had the IT that was focused on patching the hardware, right? Making sure we don't have malware or any kind of attacks. And that's kind of driven that to go into the cloud. But the advantage of that, outside of not having to do those things and spend times on that, is that you can now spend times on those innovative and strategic items that can really improve the company, like the analytics that will drive, certain things, or using artificial intelligence and telling the analytic tool to use that intelligence by, let's pick these 5 data points and now tell me something about that data that I wouldn't have figured out on my own, right? So it's really exciting the way things are changing, where the IT folks are really more of a profit center, where in the past they might have been administrative overhead, thought of as overhead, right? So it's really exciting times for technology in that regard.
All right. So Paul, we might see business continue as it is now for God knows, for a good long time, maybe another 6 months, maybe the rest of the year. What would be some of your, if you could see that and you have to accept that, would that change? I'd like to close out by seeing would that change how you look at your business and what your focus might be, and what advice would you be able to give some of the folks attending who might be running businesses themselves?
Yeah, so how technology will change our future and our customers' future. Is that what you're asking, Vijay?
Yeah, and how will how will that change your decisions, what you look at going forward now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we talked a little bit about how we've used it internally to doing things to provide a customer 360, one version of the truth for everybody in the company, analytics to support our decision making, automation and the collaboration tools. So those have already changed, our company. We're also have invested in what we call our Synergy Innovation Center, which we brought on some experts that that know artificial intelligence, like Seth mentions, sensors and IoT, other automation tools and other disruptive technology. Like in manufacturing, we have something called 3D printing or additive manufacturing. So things of that nature, where we're taking those think of them as Lego blocks. We have all these great solutions, and as you mentioned before, now we have the opportunity to say, okay, here's your current processes for our customers. Here's where you could be. What are your goals and where do you want to be? And how can we get you there in a more either automated fashion or a fashion that will provide more efficiency or allow people to be strategic? So, we're doing the same thing internally with, so that's exciting for our customers, obviously, and we have a whole ecosystem where to Seth's points, we've managed the integration, with our teams internally, so our customers don't have to worry about that. It's all set, right? So we have best of breed solutions tying into our ERPs with the business process and transformation, continuous improvement consulting on top of it. But internally, using everything that we've talked about on today's call, and now taking that data to make even better decisions. I'll give you an example. One of the things that we're working with is to do over the next 3 to 6 months is taking the customer data we have and being predictive and proactive on what we think they may need from us. So let's say in manufacturing, you have things, you always have sales, you have purchasing, you have MRP. Which customers have worked with us on growth in CRM, which customers have worked on this MRP, but what's the next logical step for them? Is the next logical step for them is to add a PO collaboration tool and really be proactive with them, instead of in the past waiting for them to tell us what they need, so we can say, hey, this is how that's going to improve your business. Here's how it's going to help the bottom line, save cost, that kind of thing. So we can use that analytics tool with some artificial intelligence to really get us there, and that's something that we're excited to implement over the next 6 months. And then all the other tools we mentioned around a platform that doesn't require customization, where you can personalize it and still upgrade. And we say we don't even have to upgrade ever again, just like with Zoho. I don't have to upgrade ever again. There's no over the weekend upgrades that ever happen. So being able to provide those tools as well as this disruptive technology that integrates to it and improves our customers' business is what we're excited about internally and externally with our customers.
Thank you for that, Paul. And over to you, Seth. Do you see going forward, what are the things that you see? How does your organization adapt in this time in terms of the advice you give people and the areas of research you might look at?
I think we've covered a lot of the details already. So, from integration, automation, cloud solutions, emerging technology, evaluating technology, we've covered a lot of that. Those themes that people have experienced over the past few months are definitely going to continue forward. And when I'm thinking about the next few months, the next 6 months to a year, maybe, the thing that I'm seeing out there and that I would really encourage companies to think about, there are two different things. One is constant flexibility here. I'm an analyst and we always put out predictions, but I've been really amused by especially those predictions that came out about 2 weeks after the pandemic about how things were going to change forever. 2 weeks of data is not a huge data set to predict how things are going to change forever. And I think already we've seen that some of those predictions have not come true. And I think this is just a constantly churning environment right now. And we're going to continue seeing predictions, but you have to be ready to turn on a moment's notice. And then the last thing that I would mention in all of this technology is the human element. Again, some of the predictions that we've seen about, people are going to be at home and they're going to be just as productive. And those have come true in part, right? And I think in part, we've also seen some of the problems with people being at home full time. And so I think there's always going to be the human element moving forward about, how do the actual people in your organization respond to these changes? How are they fitting into the new workflow? How are they doing, in this time? And can technology, help you figure that out? I think those two things are key to keep an eye on over the next few months as we still get our arms around what's going to be happening.
Okay. Well, we've reached the end of our time period here. So I would like to thank you both, Seth and Paul. Thanks a lot. I learned a lot from this discussion with you. Appreciate your intuition and your advice here. Thanks again.
Likewise, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate that. And I'd also like to thank our listeners for staying with us. We will have, at the same time next week, we plan to have a bit more of an informal virtual meetup to maybe continue on some of the topics and maybe some of the questions that may have come out of this. So anyone listening in, we'll reach out to you. Feel welcome to join us. And once again, thanks, Paul and Seth. We hope you all stay well and safe. And I hope the same for all the friends and family of our listeners as well. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.